So every now and then in Gaelic football, we get teams who come from absolutely nowhere to surprise us all. Whether it be Tipperary in 2020, Cavan in 2020, even Derry in 2022 to a certain extent, every now and then we get counties who just surprise us all, come from absolutely nowhere. The Fermanagh of the past, down in Kildare. There's been multiple counties through the history of Gaelic football who often are the surprise packages, who often surprise us, who often come from absolutely nowhere to do something quite remarkable. And to be fair, in Gaelic football it probably is few and far between, and I do think the days of surprise packages and everything else, like it is quite rare. Like even when you look at Cavan and Tipperary's success in 2020, like it's against the norm in many ways, and that was just a crazy year where crazy things happened pretty much every day. So I mean, yeah, it was just one of those mad scenarios that we're probably unlikely to see again. But if there was 5 counties who could cause a surprise, could cause a shock going into 2024, what counties could they be? What 5 counties do we think could cause a shock, could cause a surprise going into Gaelic football in 2024? That's going to be the topic of this video. That's going to be what we're going to discuss. Hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Plenty of content on this channel. We're going to be starting season previews now soon as well, discussing every county ahead of the 2024 inter-county season in both football and hurling. And of course, we'll still be continuing our club championship action and everything else. So hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Let's go. And it is worth pointing out as well that I don't necessarily think that these counties are going to win provincial titles or league titles, or I'm not even saying that these counties are going to be unbelievable or anything like that. But what I am just saying is, if there was 5 counties going into next season to upset the odds a little bit, to cause a surprise, then yeah, I think it could be these counties. And look, obviously there might be some counties on this list that I don't discuss. You know, we'll discuss that a little bit later on. It could be because I think them doing well is not a surprise as such, if you get me. So yeah, like that, do just bear that in mind. But anyway, let's get into it. So in at number 5 we have Laois, and obviously Laois, Division 4 side. Look, they will be one of the favourites for Division 4 next season, make absolutely no question about it. They obviously have a new manager in Justin McNulty. Justin McNulty managed Laois before he actually got them to the Leinster quarterfinals back in 2012, and they've done a pretty good job with Laois. He actually got them up to Division 1 a number of years ago as well. Look, I do think Laois have got good players. They were a Division 2 team like just a couple of years ago. I wouldn't necessarily say that they're a Division 2 team now, but I do think they are. They do have good players, and they should be getting out of the Division 4, and I think they should be even challenging to get out of Division 3 in my opinion. I think they've got good forwards and Mark Barry, Evan O'Carroll, obviously Paul Kingston. We'll have to see what's the story with him next year, whether he'll still be playing football. But I do think of Laois do have good players, and you know, it was a couple of years ago Laois were very competitive with Dublin at under 20 level and at minor level as well, more so at under 20 level. So I do think Laois have got good footballers. Robbie Piggott, a cornerback, is very good as well. And to be honest, I didn't really rate Billy Sheehan as manager. I will be honest. You know, he took charge of a side that was relegated from Division 2 in his first season, brought them down to Division 4. Yes, he got them to a Tailteann Cup semi-final, but they conceded 8 goals in the process. And if anything, it proved that Laois do have a good team and do have good players. They just weren't really coached or managed properly, in my opinion. So I think with Justin McNulty coming in, he will get a kick out of this Laois side, and we will see improvements with Laois next season. Now, do I think Laois will do anything, you know, hugely significant? Not really. Like, they're not going to do anything in Leinster. They might get to a semi-final in the Leinster Championship. They might get a day out at Croke Park playing Dublin. But are Laois going to be an All-Ireland series team? Absolutely not. You know, they're going to be a Tailteann Cup team. But don't get me wrong, they could be dark horses for the Tailteann Cup. And I wouldn't be entirely surprised if Laois done something in the Tailteann Cup next year, maybe got to a final, who knows, maybe even win the competition. Next up we have Down, and look, Down have an array of under 20 footballers making the breakthrough at the moment, from Liam Kerr, Oren Murdoch, Danny McGill. You've got Pat Havern, who's really established himself in this team now as well. You've obviously got experienced lads coming into the side from Kilcue's All-Ireland winning team, Micheál Rooney, Ryan Johnston, Eugene Brannigan. Will all those players be involved next season? It's hard to know. You never quite know with some of the Kilcue players whether they're going to play for Down or whether they're not going to play for Down. We don't really know. But Conor Laverty is at the wheel, and I thought in his first season he done a very good job. You know, he got them very close to getting out of Division 3, got them to a Tailteann Cup final as well. An Ulster Championship win over Donegal, let's not forget that. So I think Down have been very good under Conor Laverty. And when you think of where Down were when he took over, it was a county that was in disarray. Players didn't want to make themselves available, all sorts of chaos. And going into his second season, I think Down could be a side who could cause some shocks. And look, obviously they'll be aiming to get into the All-Ireland series. I think that will be the objective. Get out of Division 3. I think they are. It will be tough to get out of Division 3 with the likes of Clare, Westmeath, and obviously you've got Offaly in there as well. But I do think Down should have enough to get out of Division 3 and should have enough to be, in my opinion, an All-Ireland series team. I don't see them doing anything in the All-Ireland, but I think they should be in that group stages next season. You're also looking at the Ulster Championship and the way that draw went. I mean, Armagh will be the favourites, you would imagine, on that side of the draw to reach the final. And obviously they absolutely trashed Down last season. But I don't think there's a huge amount of difference between Down and Armagh. And I think with some of those Down players, it's not inconceivable that they go possibly topple Armagh, cause a shock, and reach an Ulster final. They're definitely onto something with their under-20 players. It might be a year too soon before they do anything hugely significant like reach an Ulster final. But mark my words, I do genuinely believe in the next 3 to 4 years, we might see Down do something incredibly special in Ulster and possibly even the All-Ireland series. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they're going to win an All-Ireland or anything like that. I just mean getting to a semi-final or a quarter-final is not inconceivable. Next up we have Kildare. Now, I've been someone who has thrown a lot of shade to Kildare obviously in the last sort of year or so, and I have been quite critical of their manager Glenn Ryan and sort of everything that's gone on with Kildare, and obviously the complaining about Croke Park and everything else. But look, I do think Kildare have a lot of potential over the next couple of years and next season as well. I mean, the senior team, in my opinion, is not a million miles away from getting to an All-Ireland quarter-final or even beyond that. When we look at it, Monaghan obviously reached an All-Ireland semi-final this year, an extraordinary season for them. Kildare were actually leading Monaghan going into injury time, or a couple of minutes going into injury time of that game in the in the All-Ireland qualifiers. And they were just, they were very close to beating Monaghan. Now, would they have gone on and beaten Armagh? Maybe not. We don't know. But I don't think Kildare are a million miles away from, being a side who can get to an All-Ireland quarter-final or possibly even beyond that, because, their age profile of their team is very good. They've got a lot of very good players, a lot of very good forwards in the likes of Dara Kirwan, Jimmy Hyland maybe still to come back into the side. You've obviously got the Flynn still in there, Neil Flynn, Daniel Flynn. Very strong midfield in the likes of Kevin Feely. And then you factor that into, obviously, Kildare's under-20 team, won the All-Ireland this year in 2023, and were in the final just a year ago in 2022 as well. And you've got some very good players potentially to come through from that side, in the likes of Killian Brown, Callum Bolton have been very impressed with as well, and Tomas von Engelbrechten, am I saying that name right? Probably not. But I've heard a lot of good things about him as well. I don't know if it's just because he has a really cool name. But yeah, he's, apparently from what I've heard, he's been very good as well. So, I think Kildare could very well be onto something in my opinion. And I would say just watch them quite closely next year. Are they going to win a Leinster Championship? No, I don't think they've enough to topple Dublin just yet. But when you look at the age profile and the younger players coming in, the fact that Dublin's players are, slowly getting on. I mean, there will be retirements going into next season, and there could be, some more players who are aging and everything else. Kildare, in my opinion, will win a Leinster title in the next 5 years. I'm fairly confident of it. I don't think they'll do it next year, but I do think getting, to a quarter final or, at a stretch of semi-final, I don't think is inconceivable for Kildare. And I think they could be, they could surprise people next year. They really could. Number 2, I've got Donegal. Obviously, Jim McGuinness coming into Donegal as manager. And we know how good of a manager he is, having won the All-Ireland with Donegal back in 2012. Now, do I think Donegal are going to win the All-Ireland next season? No, I don't think that they will. And, I don't even think, it's probably likely that Jim McGuinness doesn't even win an All-Ireland with Donegal in his second spell. But I do think Donegal could cause some surprises and shocks next year. And I do think, I think obviously we look at last year and how poor they were getting relegated from Division 1. And obviously in the Championship they weren't particularly brilliant either. They had some very poor results, losing to Down. In the All-Ireland series they beat Monaghan, but at the same time they got absolutely trashed by Tyrone in the qualifiers. I do think they've good players though. And it was only a couple of years ago Donegal were in an Ulster final. And I think people are forgetting that. They have players who can win Ulster Championships. They have good footballers. You look around the likes of Michael Langan, Caleb McGonigal around midfield. You've got Oisín Gallen, who looks, a player who could really lead the line for Donegal over the next couple of years. Paddy McBrearty, you would argue, is coming slowly probably to the end of his time as a footballer, as an inter-county footballer, but I still think he's got another year or two left in him, and I think he could be critical for Donegal if they are to do anything significant next year. And look, you would back them to get out of Division 2. They'll certainly be one of the favourites, and look, they'll be underdogs in Ulster. You know, going up against Derry in the opening match, not many people will expect Donegal to do much in Ulster, and they mightn't do much in Ulster, but I do think they're going to be a very sticky team, a very tough team to beat. And yeah, I think Donegal could very well, you know, again, quarter-final, semi-final. Like, because when you look at it, in my opinion, I think we've got, in my opinion, Dublin, Kerry and Derry, in my opinion, as the top 3 teams in the country right now. But I think there is a gap between them and the rest. Do you know, like, I think any other county on their day could get to a semi-final. Monaghan could get back to a semi-final. You know, I don't know, as I said, I think Kildare, Mayo, Galway, Roscommon, I think all these counties with a bit of run of form, a bit of luck, could get to a semi-final. I don't think Cork are a million miles off as well. So, yeah, and obviously Donegal, Tyrone, like, I think Donegal, you know, they're not a million miles off it, in my opinion, and they've got a lot of very good footballers, a lot of very good players. There might be a change in players, there might be some new footballers who need to come in, but I would keep an eye on Donegal next year. They could do something. We'll just run through some honourable mentions before I discuss the county that I think is most likely to cause a surprise and a shock next season. Some honourable mentions include Cork, Clare, Offaly, Fermanagh and Sligo. I think all 5 of those could cause a surprise. Obviously, Cork got to a quarter-final last season. Again, I think Cork having a good season, though, isn't a surprise. Maybe if they got to a semi-final, it would be a surprise. But I just think the other 5 counties on this list are probably more likely. I know Laois, I've obviously discussed Laois, and they're sort of further on down the chain. I wanted to try get a Division 4 side in this video as well, to be fair. Clare, obviously new manager. You know, it will be tough for them next season. But again, you know, we've seen Clare cause surprises and shocks. A Munster final is not inconceivable for Clare again next year. Offaly, obviously under 20 champions a couple of years ago. A couple more players now settling into the team, although they have lost a good chunk of players from the AFL. And I put Fermanagh in here as well, because everyone's looking at Fermanagh as nailed on to get relegated from Division 2. Look, I think it's likely they get relegated, but I think, you know, they're always tough to beat in Brewster Park. They're always tough to beat at home, no matter where they're playing. So I don't think it's inconceivable, you know, and I don't think it's a formality that they get relegated. So, but look, we'll discuss that, I'm sure, when the All-Ireland predictions video comes around. And obviously Sligo, I mean, as we were saying there, they were in the under-20 All-Ireland final this year. They've got a lot of young players making the breakthrough. I just think next year will be a year too soon. I couldn't see them getting out of Division 3. I think it will be tricky for them, obviously, in Connacht as well. But in the Tailteann Cup, maybe Sligo could possibly go all the way. You know, they were semi-finalists a couple of years ago. Not inconceivable that they don't push on and do something. Alright, so let's discuss the side that I think is most likely to cause a shock next season. And it's Roscommon. Roscommon, obviously, last season knocked out in the qualifiers by Cork, and they finished 3rd in Division 1. I suppose this is a bit of an interesting one, because some people would probably say Roscommon having a great season isn't actually that big of a surprise. Like, if they got to an All-Ireland semi-final next year, I don't think it would necessarily be that big of a surprise. But I do think Roscommon are a very good side. They've got a very good manager in Davy Burke. I think he's one of the best young and up-and-coming managers in Gaelic football right now. I think he sees the game, you know, in a completely different way to most people. I think he is a trendsetter, and I think he will be one of those managers we look back at in 6-7 years and think, you know, he was one of the first early adopters. Like, the way Roscommon play, like, they play the game so differently to a lot of other teams. They change patterns, they change ways of playing. They'll press up, they'll drop back, they'll kick long, they'll kick short. They play in multiple different ways. Like, they play multiple different systems in a game, and you know, I think eventually, I think what caught up with them last year was the fact that their team is more or less the same every game. They don't have a huge amount of depth in their team, and I think that's maybe what's cost them over the last couple of seasons. And I think that's what, you know, eventually caused them to burn out. I think next year with Roscommon, they'll have a poor enough league. I still think they'll stay up, but I think they'll have a poor enough league. I think they'll beat Mayo again in Connacht. They won't win the Connacht Championship, but then they'll come good in the All-Ireland series. And you know, I think Enda Smith obviously won an All-Star recently. You know, top quality footballer. You got Ben O'Carroll, who looks very good. Very impressed with Brian Stack in defence. The Murthas are obviously very good players as well. You do have a couple of younger footballers who are knocking on the door. And I think now is the time for Roscommon. I really do. I think next year, they could do something. You look at this year, like they nearly beat Dublin in Croke Park. They weren't a million miles away from beating Dublin. I know Dublin played poorly that day, but I also think Roscommon played poorly. I don't think Roscommon were at their best that day. They missed chances. They didn't put their foot on the pedal when they should have. And I think Roscommon at their best beat Dublin quite comfortably that day. Obviously, if Dublin are at their best, maybe it's a different game. But I honestly do think Roscommon are onto something. I really, really do. And I have bigged up Roscommon a couple of times over the last couple of years. But I feel like next season is the season that they could go on a bit of a run. And as I said, I think Dublin, Kerry and Derry, are ahead of the pack. I think everyone else underneath, Mayo, Galway, Armagh, Tyrone, all those counties who've been thereabouts over the last few years, I think, they will be... I think Roscommon, in my opinion, I think have the edge over a lot of those counties. They've beaten a lot of them over the last couple of years. And I think they can go and do it. The only thing that I think could hold them back again is just that mental aspect of, big games in the qualifiers or quarterfinals. They seem to freeze a little bit in those big matches. But I do think they're onto something. I think they've got very good footballers, very good players. And I think Roscommon, could be the biggest surprise next season. Let me know your thoughts, your opinions in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and subscribe. Plenty more content coming your way soon. My name is Aaron. Chat to y'all later.